All right, let's try this again. Does everything seem to be working over there in technical land? So we're having a bit of a problem with our stream, but I think we got it well. We're talking about, of course, digital stream, not urine stream. That seems to be just fine. But nonetheless, moving on. What we're going to be talking about this evening, I hope that I can put it, as I was saying previously, in a different perspective. So we always hear about how chemicals are bad for us and blah, blah, blah. But there's kind of this underlying idea, I feel anyway, in many, that it's like, well, you know, once you have this exposure to the chemicals, then it just kind of goes away. You know, maybe after we put some bug spray around our house, or we put off all over our body to repel mosquitoes, and after we take a shower, you know, we're just kind of done with that. It's no longer affecting us in any way. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit, and how that may not actually be true, and in fact, these things can accumulate. So first, let me introduce myself before I go into more detail about our subject this evening. My name is laden. I'm a traditional naturopath, healer, and whole food expert. I've been practicing here in the Victoria area and now in surrounding cities as well for the past 14 years at the Natural Health Clinic. Now, what I do with people is work with them one-on-one in a personalized total health restoration program. And the way that I work with them in a customized program is by fine-tuning their diet to what their genetic potential or their DNA actually requires in order for health. So we hear all of these different kinds of diets that you need to eat, you know, paleo, vegetarian, Atkins, South Beach diet, whatever it may be, caveman diet, on and on and on. The list is literally endless. But we never really think about what we may need personally, specifically, for our genetics and the way that our body functions, as opposed to, you know, even our parents or our children. So that's one of the main things that I do in working with individuals, is finding out exactly how your body needs to be fed, not just to live, but to reach your potential of who you should be and have as good of health as you possibly can. And then the other way that I work with individuals is by assessing what's actually occurring in their biochemistry, what's actually occurring biochemically within their organ systems and their glandular systems, what may be interfering with them from having the best function that they can possibly get for themselves, or if there is some kind of deficiency that is lowering the functions of those areas of the body. And then through that form of analysis that I use in working with individuals, we can also identify specifically what those areas of the bodies need, and also what your body needs in order to remove the interference to 100% function. Now that actually segues very well into our topic, because one of those things that can interfere with the functions of our organs and our glands are chemicals. So just stop and think for a moment how many chemicals we are actually exposed to on just a daily basis. Well, quite often, as you lay in bed sleeping, you are exposed to toxic chemicals. Not only through the mattress, the sheets, what you've washed the sheets in, what your pillows are made out of. I already said what the mattress is made out of, but also the products that your bed itself is made out of, or your dressers, or you know, if you use stain or varnish or paint, or new carpeting or new hard floors or vinyl composite floors, or you just got your wood floors varnished, you just remodeled and painted. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So even though we haven't woken up yet, very possibly we're being constantly and consistently and accumulatively exposed to chemical toxicity. But it doesn't stop there. How about if you have remodeled and you don't like that odor, and so what you've done is you plugged in a Sensi into a wall. Oh my God. Well, now you have more chemicals being pushed into the environment. Or if you're not using something like that, or Glade plug-in or whatever it is, then you're burning candles maybe, you know, for fragrance. Or maybe you're using Febreze. Although I'm not plugging Febreze, and if you do want me to plug you, then you should send me money, but you won't, because I'm saying don't use that crap. But nonetheless, you know, you may be using something like that. So the point is that from the very moment of living and popping ourselves out of the womb anymore, we are inundated with chemical in the environment and very much into our body. In fact, talking about popping out of the womb, what about so many infants are given chemicals in the form of vaccinations almost immediately? So I mean, there it starts right there. And that's with a good birth. If they're a preemie and having problems, then who knows all that's occurring. Not to mention all the toxic exposure that baby has already been dealing with because of being inside of its mother, who is full of all kinds of chemical toxicity. So it really starts at the moment of conception. My goodness, we can just go as far back as possible. And it's been going on for at least 100 years and only gets worse. So one of the ways, because I talk about, we realize that there are chemicals in the environment. We realize that they accumulate. So how can we begin removing those kinds of chemicals? Well, really, in the scenario that I've given you, as far as we haven't even gotten out of bed yet and we're being exposed to chemicals, is one of the ways. The easiest way is that you can just open up your house. Yeah, it's not so great now in the beginning of summer, but you can just open up your house, turn off the air conditioning. If you want to, put a box fan in the window, pushing out towards the yard, and just let air blow freely throughout your home. That's one way of getting rid of chemical exposure, because if you smell it, it's in your body. It's really that simple. It's not any kind of magic. So that's the simplest way of helping to get rid of some of the toxic exposure in your environment. And then it becomes more complex from there. You can start looking into the different ways to begin eliminating chemicals that you use for, let's say, in laundering your sheets and your bed products. You can look at the different types of pillows, for example, that you're using. Are you using some form of petroleum product pillow? Many people do. They're gel pillows. They have these cervical pillows, which are just, it's all plastic inside of there, basically. And yes, that is a form of chemical exposure. And yes, it is bothering you, whether you want to believe it or the government says it or not. It is. It's just, that's the way it is. So you can look at more natural forms of pillows and bedding. Now, some people are allergic to down, but that is one form of natural bedding. And then you can look at trying to find chemicals in cleansing that are less chemical laden. And there are brand names that are decent. I won't say that they're fantastic, but they're decent. One of them that's decent is 7th generation. You can get ones that are scent-free and sodium lauryl sulfate free. Bad detergents that are uncommon, laundry detergents and even soaps and shampoos and things like that. You can find ones in which they do not have those particular types of chemicals. And so that's a very good place to start too, and actually it's not very expensive because you're simply just switching a product out, and it is well worth it. Well worth it. And as well, some things that you can do to save money is not use laundry sheets for dryer sheets. Those particular chemicals, and most of them are absolutely horrible, and they are penetrants, which means that they will penetrate into the product. That's the idea of them. So that as well means, because those penetrants are very, very good at their job. So when you lay in bed and you put those sheets around you that are so soft and comfy, well, guess what? Now those chemicals which have penetrated those sheets have now penetrated through your skin transdermally. Speaking of penetrants, also dry cleaning is absolutely horrible and a gigantic source of toxic exposure. So I wear dress clothing nearly every day, and I do not ever get my clothing dry cleaned. So people sometimes ask me, well, what do you do then? I just walk around as a smelly mess. No, what I do, instead of doing that, that's option B. What I do is, for example, dress pants. And you can do it with skirts, dresses, whatever, suits. I use steam. So I use a steam cleaner. And it both takes out all the wrinkles and it actually keeps your clothing clean, because the 210 degrees or even above that will definitely clean your clothing. And so before I put them in the closet, they're going to be steam cleaned and steamed, and then they're hung up. So I do that every single time after wearing them. And as far as shirts like this, I simply wash them myself. 100% cotton, by the way, because if you're wearing plastic clothing, guess what? Another source of chemical exposure. And just look at your clothing, and I guarantee you, you are wearing something that has plastic in it. Polyester, nylon, spandex, it is all chemical, and it definitely penetrates the body and affects you whether you want to believe it or not. All right? It really doesn't matter if you want to believe it. The difference is if you do believe it, you can do something to help yourself. If you don't believe it, you're just going to die from it in some way. That's it. That's the only difference. So try to get as natural products in your clothing even as you can. Sometimes it's not possible, but do so. I mean, for example, your underwear probably going to have nylon for a waistband. Not too many drawstring underwear anymore that I can think of, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't want to wear it personally, but nonetheless, burlap sack maybe, I don't know, but might be a little irritating. Anyway, you know, some things we just can't get around at this point in time, so you're going to have some exposure, but try to be as natural of a substance as possible. And so I was saying, as far as shirts, cotton shirts, I wash them, then I take them to a dry cleaners and instruct them press only. So they only get pressed. That's it. I don't want them to wash them. They want you to let them wash them. Absolutely not. I don't know what chemicals they use, and it doesn't matter. I guarantee they're not good for you no matter what they say. So I wash them. They do not. They only press them.
Does it have to be like 100% organic cotton, or I mean, is that?
No, I mean, I don't. You can. It's kind of difficult. You can also find like bamboo that's organic and so forth. And yes, that is something to consider, and that's actually a very good point of how much chemicals there are in the environment, because even when you're getting a cotton product, the cotton has been sprayed with huge amounts of chemicals, and absolutely yes, it's going to be in that clothing. You can't get around it.
Feminine products and stuff, right?
That I'm going to get into. That's kind of a whole different subject, but yes, remind me a little bit later if I miss it. Definitely going to get into that. So, and other things, you know, they will bleach the cotton to make it perfectly white, and then they put dyes in it in order to get different colors. So those dyes are chemicals as well. It's just, it's really impossible to completely get away from toxicity, and so that's why in a minute we're going to be talking about what we can do as far as getting rid of it as much as possible in our body. So, but first, you know, if we try to get rid of it in our body, but we don't do anything about getting rid of it in our environment, then it's ridiculous. There's really no reason to do anything then, because there's so much of it that if we don't do both, there's no point to it. You know, if we try to get rid of it in our environment, that's great. We may not be getting nearly as much anymore, but I guarantee you we are not getting rid of what has accumulated in our body like you think. Because as I said earlier, most people think that, hey, they just sprayed this off all over themselves or the kids, and now they've taken a shower and now they're fine. That's baloney. I mean, it is. There's a fairly good amount of toxic level of that crap in your body, and the more you use it, the more there is, and years of use, there's just years and years of accumulation. That's all there is to it. So first step is eliminating as much as you can. And then, you know, moving from clothing, you have your toiletry products, as I mentioned earlier as well. You have your creams and your shaving creams and your facial products and your cosmetics and your soaps and your body washes and your shampoos and your hairsprays and your conditioners and your mousse, and holy crap, it goes on and on and on. And those are full of terrible stuff. Depending on what it is, they can be full of things like parabens, which those are known in many studies. I mean, just go to PubMed.com, PLOS.com. In the search box, type in parabens and breast cancer or reproductive cancer. Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of studies pop up. And so you can see, okay, whoop, this has parabens in it. Guess what? You are putting a known substance in your body that creates breast cancers, reproductive cancers, you know, and don't think, oh my God, if it's that terrible, the government won't allow it in there. Nope, it's there, and there are the studies proving it. Hello. It's that simple. So don't use the stuff. You can find products that are better. Some brand names, 100% pure. I've used it. I've had it in the clinic. I can't say it's good across the board. It doesn't always test perfectly well on everyone, but I can tell you, even if you don't get it tested on you, that it's going to be better for you than the crap that you're probably using. So use something else. Another, go ahead.
Skindeep.com, is that a good place, do you think, to start?
Yeah, that's where they rate the different products, and yes, that is very good. Skindeep.com, let me actually put that down here. Oh, look at that, I didn't write this down. Wow, what a day it's been. Okay, I don't know what happens to my markers, but they always dry up. I'm not using them recreationally, I promise. Ins and outs. Toxic exposure. Okay. Yes, is it Skin Deep? Are you verifying that? Okay.
It's www.ewg.org.
Okay. Okay. Say that again.
www.ewg.org.
Yep. Okay. Oh yes, EWG. Environmental Working Group. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's the Environmental Working Group.org, and they rate. Wow, just type in the product you're using, and they'll give you a rating and what's bad about it or what's good about it. It's very good. Very good. Thank you. That's helpful. Where was I? So yeah, toiletry items, very big one. Deodorants are huge, as I mentioned earlier. Cosmetics, huge. That not only gives you chemical toxic exposure, but metal toxic exposure, which is toxicity, by the way, obviously. Lead is a big one for cosmetics. Chromium, nickel, those kinds of metals are really common from hair care products, especially dyes and so forth, bleaching components, etc. Be aware if you get waxing done, or if you in manicures they do the paraffin waxes. We just talked about paraffin. That's bad, so don't do that. All right, use something else. And there are different products that you can use for that that are much safer. So then you start moving into your kitchen. And you again have toxic exposure. We're not even talking about the food or drink, which is laden with toxic chemicals, but your cookware. I mean, you have to be very careful of what you're cooking with, because you can either get metal or chemical toxic exposure in the food that you have bought and paid for. That's very expensive for organic, non-GMO, and hello, depending on what you're using as far as cookware, now it's none of that. Have you guys thought of that? All right. So if you're using some type of cookware that is giving you metal or chemical toxic exposure, no matter how wonderful and perfect, and you grew it in your garden and you raised it yourself, guess what? It's now not any of that. It's no longer organic. Might be non-GMO still. Who knows though? Who knows what Teflon actually does? No. So what's becoming more common that I've seen, this is in the last couple of years. I haven't looked real recent, so there may be new stuff on the market. But I've seen that they have this aluminum clad with ceramic cookware. Seems to be very popular everywhere, semi-cheap, and supposed to be fantastic. I wouldn't trust it at all right, just to let you know. I have not seen any studies backing that up, but with years of experience, I would not trust it at all. All right, and all these coated, like Teflon coated, they're kind of moving away from that, but now that these other coatings as well, don't use them. They are going to do the same thing eventually. Flake off, end up in the food, kill you, all of the above. Don't do it. What is somewhat better is stainless steel, although you can get nickel from that. You can sometimes get chromium from it. It's a little bit better, still problems. Copper can be very good, although you can get toxic levels of copper, but copper is actually a mineral that we need, and if it's pure copper, it actually will kill microorganisms. It's very cool stuff. As well as if you get copper countertops, you can cut meat on it and don't even have to wash it off. It's very cool stuff. I mean, it'd be nasty if you didn't, but you get the point. It kills microorganisms. So, but it's highly expensive if it's real solid copper. Very expensive. Other would be silver, but that would be even more expensive. Silver is also antimicrobial. They used to, many decades ago, put silver dollars in a gallon of milk to keep it longer, last much longer, because silver kills bacteria. That's why colloidal silver is commonly used for antibacterial properties. So what I use, actually it's very cheap, Pyrex. Pyrex is glass. Sometimes it's very difficult to cook with, so you do need to be aware of that. It requires a lot of attention if you're frying. It seems to stick no matter what you do and how much coconut oil or butter or lard you use. It still sticks somewhat. There's ways around that, but just you definitely have to pay attention to it. But that's what I use, and it is cheaper, and you can get an entire set off eBay for next to nothing, and you can drop it on the ground. It never breaks. It lasts forever. Do you have any suggestions?
When do you,
Wouldn't be horribly worried about it as far as the Pyrex, but when you're getting into glasses, then yes, it can, you get the lead crystal, it definitely has lead in it. So it can be a problem.
cast iron? I didn't know if you were thinking.
Cast iron, no. Cast iron is also good, but I have actually found that sometimes people get toxified through the iron in the cast iron. It's still something that I would recommend. I think it's much better than even stainless steel. And you can use it for frying much easier, so that's an advantage. I use cast iron as well, mainly in frying because really it doesn't work well at all as far as the glass. Cast iron does work. You have to take care of it though. It will rust very, very easily, so take care of it and last forever then. Any other forms of cookware? That's basically the ones. Don't use plastic. Just get rid of anything plastic. I don't care if it's food that you put in plastic containers and it's going to be cold. Just get rid of the plastic. I mean, you can get Cornell glassware. It's much, much better. All right, it's far more inert. Just use that. All right, it's well worth it. And you don't have to do all of these things overnight. It is a lot of work. It can be very overwhelming. It can get expensive if you change out all your cookware and all your bedding and all your toiletry items and all your clothing. I think you're now well into tens and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So don't do that overnight unless you can. Then that's fine, no problem. So the idea is though, but you have to look closely at your environment and how you're being affected by all the chemistry, if you will, that's in it. Something else, and this is just to illustrate what I said earlier about the idea that once you've washed it off, it's gone. Something that's, well, I don't know if it's popular anymore, but I remember doing it as a teenager and younger in our home. We would use insect bombs. All right, go away for a day, and in the morning we do an insect bomb and have the entire house fogged with insecticide, basically, to keep all the nasty critters out. And then somehow you think that because you can't see it, it's gone. It isn't gone. What actually happens to all of those things and all of the chemicals that are used, no matter if you're spraying something on the countertop, you think you wipe it off and it's gone, that it's evaporated. It hasn't. It crystallizes, it becomes dry, it flakes off in the dust. So now it's in the entire environment. It's not only on the surface now, after years and years of use, or years and years of insecticide and bug chemicals. It's not only on those surfaces that you put it, but now, because you've cleaned it and you've mopped around, it's gone up into the environment, up into the air, carried on the dust, and it's on your walls, and it's on your ceiling, and it's on your seats, it's on absolutely everything. Your doorknobs, everything. No matter how well you clean, it is everywhere in the dust. So that's what I mean about you can't get away from it. And also, once it's entered the body, many of these chemicals start displacing things that our body requires and needs. And so once those things are displaced, then the body holds on to the chemicals and starts being toxified by those chemicals. And unless we get more of what the body actually needs to displace the toxic chemicals, we hang on to that stuff forever. Until we're dead anyway. Well, who knows? Maybe the cadaver still holds on to it. But nonetheless, it stays around for a long time. Case in point, chlorine. Here's another way of where we may not think about chemical exposure. But municipal water supplies, they are full of chlorine. So when we take a shower, and hopefully you do not drink the tap water, but if you were to, you're getting huge amounts of chlorine and fluoride exposure. And think about this. What happens to all of the prescription drugs, medications that people take, and they have a bowel movement, and they pee in the toilet, and they flush it, and it goes into the municipal water supply? What do you think happens to all of those pharmaceutical chemicals? That's all chemicals from petroleum. Do you think it's filtered out of the municipal water supply? Absolutely not. It is not. So if you drink the tap water without filtering it first, you are most certainly constantly getting diluted amounts of those pharmaceutical drugs that everyone in your city is taking. Now, isn't that just a wonderful idea? So there's going to be forms of chemical exposure that you haven't even considered. So chlorine, as an example, is a hydrofluorocarbon, and what it does is it displaces iodine, and also fluoride displaces iodine, and affects bone tremendously, especially in men and boys, due to testosterone. That hormone creates bone cancer a lot in men. So once that chemical, once the chlorine or whatever the case may be, has displaced the iodine that the thyroid needs, then guess what? You start toxifying the thyroid gland and the cells that would use thyroid hormone. Okay? They're all receptive to the hydrofluorocarbon. And so that is actually kind of a side note you might find interesting. That's actually what many now are thinking when some people take iodine. They start having these reactions, the skin rash, headaches, things like that, that actually it is a detoxification of these hydrofluorocarbons that's occurring. And it's not an allergy to iodine, because really there can't be an allergy to iodine because it's a mineral, and usually it's proteins or amino acids that the body is reacting to. So it seems to be that it's actually a toxic detoxification, rather, from these hydrofluorocarbons when you take in the iodine. Although I'm not saying take in huge amounts of iodine, because I don't want you coming down with rashes and so forth and say that it's my fault. Because it's your fault because you took it. All right, let me wet my whistle here. So yeah, don't drink the tap water, and be careful of showering in municipal water. There are shower filters that are fairly inexpensive, well worth the effort of getting them. Aquasana is one. Are you familiar with Aquasana?
Have I ever heard of it?
Are you familiar with it?
Uh-uh.
Wow. You know what? I don't know how to spell aqua. Oh my God. Yeah, Aquasana. Here we go. Aquasana.com. Got it. There are others. I'm not saying this is the best at all, but that's just one example. Probably every couple of months, every 3 months, you'll have to replace the filter. If you don't replace the filter frequently, guess what? No point in using it, because it's just going to be full of chlorine again.
What about Berkey?
Berkey is fantastic for filtering your water that you're going to drink, your potable water.
Shower filters that I saw, but I don't know how well.
Is that right? I wasn't aware of that. Okay, so yeah, look at Berkey shower filters. Probably Berkey.com if I'm not mistaken, or just search Berkey. Find all kinds of things. And Berkey water filtration units are very good for potable water. I do recommend those. They're gravity fed and definitely worth the investment. You have to filter your water. It's just terrible if you don't. So as far as getting it out of your body, you know, one of the most common things, if you've been around the natural health world for, 1 month, the most common thing you hear is, hey, do a purification or do a cleanse, or, do a detoxification program, or do a colon flush, colon hydrotherapy. That sounds so fun, to get water shot up your butt. And that's really clean things up. Well, it will definitely clean out your colon. But the idea that doing a cleanse once or twice or even several times is going to get rid of all of your chemical exposure that you built up for the last 40 years is simply ludicrous. For one thing, you are going to have chemicals that you've been exposed to that have an affinity for certain areas of the body. So, for example, what I mean is you're going to have certain chemicals that have an affinity for the thyroid, like chlorine. You're going to have certain affinity or chemicals that have an affinity for brain, if it can penetrate the blood-brain barrier, and some of them do. Case in point, there thinking that, hey, you know, the plaques that they said cause Alzheimer's, it may not be that those plaques are so bad. In fact, when they're taking medications now that stop the plaquing, that might even be creating worse of a problem with Alzheimer's. Imagine that. So what is the plaquing about? Well, the plaquing seems to be that the body or the brain is creating those plaques in order to kill bacteria that has penetrated the blood-brain barrier. So it's part of the immune system. Now, it's not that the plaques aren't causing a problem. They are, but it's a response to a brain infection. All right? So, yes, there will be chemicals that penetrate that blood-brain barrier. So the point is that there's certain chemicals that have an affinity for certain organs and tissue and glands. And so how could you possibly think that you're going to do a purification program or a liver cleanse or a colon cleanse or colon hydrotherapy and detoxify your entire body of all of those chemicals for every one of those tissue? Now, if you have a very good purification program and you do it many, many, many times, okay, like you do it every other month, or you do it every 3 months, or you do it every 6 months for the next 10 years, you're going to remove a certain amount of chemical exposure, no doubt. But the idea that you're going to get rid of all of it to the point that now you're going to be perfectly and wonderfully happy is simply ludicrous. It's ridiculous. So the question becomes, how can you get rid of targeted areas, chemical exposure in certain areas of the body? And that's what I can help with. Because what we do is a form of analysis that we use. It's an autonomic nervous system form of analysis. We can body, and then exactly what the body needs to get rid of that chemical exposure per that tissue. All right? So if you have, and this is another thing that's quite interesting, you could have chlorine that is affecting your thyroid. Let's say it's actually in the thyroid tissue. And you could have chlorine that's affecting your kidney. You could find it in both areas. And what's interesting to me, and I hope interesting to you, is that what the body may need to get rid of the chlorine in your thyroid is not necessarily what also will help the body get rid of the chlorine in your kidney. So you can see how targeted and specific it can become, and at the same time, how complex it can actually be. So that's what I can help you with, and that's part of the Total Health Restoration Program, as far as identifying how you need to eat so that we can not only get your body functioning like a high-performance engine, but also reduce some of the chemical exposure that's going to be in your food and drink, and then at the same time find targeted ways of removing a lot of this chemical exposure in different tissues that are really asking for help in your particular health case. Any questions before I move on? Now, the other thing that in conclusion, that I want to bring up is that so many people now, and a lot of people are starting to wake up. They're saying, you know, why is there so much of this crap in the environment? And yes, a lot of it has to do with greed, you know, and if you just say, well, it's greed, and people kind of tune out at that point. But there's more to it than just greed. Don't think that the companies who use these different products, like parabens in the toiletries and fire retardants in mattresses, they don't know what it does to your body. So it's not just greed. Really, what's happening is that our food and our drink is becoming weaponized, literally, intentionally weaponized. And why it's becoming weaponized, well, that's actually something that I discuss in my podcast, The Nutrition Maverick, that's on iTunes. And speaking about that, look what we have here for you, the viewing audience. We have T-shirts, look at that, Nutrition Maverick, Labron J. Allen, and on the back side has our nice little motto, knowledge is your weapon, your body the battlefield. And that's exactly what is going on. And, you know, the idea is the shirts, yes, I want people to know about my podcast, obviously. But also the idea is that when you wear these, number one, you're going to start seeing other people who wear them. And it's like, hey, you know, I know where that comes from. And we have the same kind of philosophy and ideas. And, you know, you can get to know people that way and introduce yourself. The second thing is that you get to get people's brains out of their butt, basically, and find out that there's something going on that's very bad, that there is an intentional, well-organized plan to kill us by a lot of people, and if you don't wake up and do something, you're simply going to be a casualty. And in fact, if you don't do something about it, you are already a casualty, because you think the people that are dying from degenerative diseases, the top three being heart disease, cancer, and hell, now I forgot what the third one is, but a bad one nonetheless. Is it diabetes? Maybe diabetes. I forget. Don't quote me on that. But cancer, or heart disease and cancer are the first two. Those are degenerative diseases. They are not diseases of old age. They are not diseases of genetics. All right? Now, the reason that you had genetic predispositions that, well, my mother died, my grandmother died, my father died, and my great uncle died, the reason that happens is because of this crap that we've talked about this evening, as far as toxic exposure, and the food that also has the same things, not to mention that it's been ultra processed and doesn't have any of the nutrients that your body needs, so at the same time that you're getting really poisoned, weaponized poison into the body, intentional, you also aren't getting the materials that your body needs in order to be healthy. That causes genetic expressions that is transferred to offspring, and so therefore, boom, oh, well, heart disease is genetic. Cancer, oh, it's so sad what's going on. You're a great cancer survivor. Keep taking that toxic chemo just to help you out and kill you a little bit more, and it's probably better to die from the cancer than the chemo, but you know, whatever, it's good for you. That kind of thing going on, all right? It's disgusting, and let's try to wake people up as much as we can so that we can move as a culture and a population, and hopefully on a world level, towards something that's actually healthy and conducive to the human species living on. That's what this podcast is about, and I hope that you listen to it. Now, as a side note, if you want to support and join the resistance, get yourself a t-shirt. Right now they're completely free. I mean, you can't get much cheaper than that. So if you would like a Nutrition Maverick podcast t-shirt, here is simply what you do. Let me tell you. There's two ways. The first one is, where is it? Oh, here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but you can email frontdesk@wholefoodcure.com. Frontdesk@wholefoodcure.com. Your name, your address, and we need your email, but if you email us, we have the email, and we will ship to you completely free, shipping on us, a t-shirt to you. Tell us what size you want, what color you want. The colors that we have are black, red, blue, and green. Black, red, blue, and green. So if you'd like your free t-shirt and help support the resistance to the weaponized battle of food and environment against our health, then I invite you to do so. Also, if you are interested in learning how you can become healthier, if you would like me to work with you on a one-on-one personalized basis to really reach your health goals, whatever they may be, then what I invite you to do is quite simple. Maybe my red marker will work. Simply text, because likely you're watching this on a mobile device, so you can easily text right now. Simply text the words total health. And there is no space in between total health. So total health to 44222. That's 44222. And it will text total health to 44222. It will send you a immediate text back. Say, hey, enter your email, and then you'll be sent all the information immediately of how you can get an initial consultation reduced $187 from the regular price. I mean, you got it, that's almost free. It's not free, but it's almost free. It's only $62 if you text Total Health to 44222. And once you do that, you'll be sent all the information in your email of how you can do that. Now, as long as you text by 11:59 p.m. this evening, then you can get that initial consultation to find out if you can be a nutritional candidate, if you can be a client of mine, and we can work together towards your health goals for only $62. But if you do it at 12 a.m., guess what? You're not going to get initial consultation for $62. So it's an incredible deal. It's actually 2 complete appointments. The first one is the initial consultation. The second one is the report of findings, in which we have a computerized report that tells you what's happening in your body causing the health situation that you're facing, and what may be interfering with those areas of the body, what you can do to get rid of that interference to the body, and what your body needs in order to support those organ systems and areas. So those 2 appointments, initial consultation and report of findings, is for only $62 if you text Total Health at 44222 by 11:59 p.m., almost said a.m., p.m. this evening. All right? If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments box, and we'll answer them as we can. And I hope you found this information very interesting. Again, if you want your t-shirt, simply email frontdesk@wholefoodcure.com with your name, with your address, because we have to know where to send it to, and the color and size that you want. Remember the 4 colors? Black, blue. Black and blue, haha. Black, blue, red, and green. Okay? Color and size. All right. I'm Labor Allen. Best of health to you. I hope you enjoyed the free health class this evening. See you again in a couple of weeks.